Okay, so good evening everyone, and let us get started on the questions. So we'll just fire away. So number one, dear Ajahn Brahmali, thank you so much for the inspiring teachings. When I sit to meditate, almost within a minute I feel sensations are on my forehead, is that right? Slowly moving to my face and almost across my body here. If I was in a NYE Retreat, I will watch these sensations and continue to observe the rise and fall of them. But then when I do breath meditation, I find myself observing the sensations and not the breath. Okay. Is this okay? Am I trapped with enjoying and watching these cool sensations? What we are trying, always remember that what we are doing is measured by its outcome. It is the outcome that decides whether something is right or wrong. And what we are trying to achieve is we're trying to achieve a peaceful state of calm, ideally to give rise to some joy, and eventually, if we are successful, maybe to even have a nimitta experience or something like that. That is what we're trying. The purpose of all of this is to gain samadhi. And the reason is because samadhi is one of those things that you have to pass through on the way to the end, all the way to the end of the path. And samadhi is, achievable for most people. If you just kind of keep on persevering and committing to this path. So that is what we're trying to achieve. So does this lead to samadhi? This is the question. Does it lead to the, the mind becoming unified, to the experience of all of these beautiful qualities that are part of this path? That is the question you should ask. And if it leads to that, you can watch those sensations. So see what happens. If it doesn't lead to that, if it kind of becomes, if it stops at a certain point, then try to come back to the breath again. It's just a matter of unlearning the previous method a little bit and then coming to the breath. Ideally, what you want to do is to have enough mindfulness so you can choose whether to watch the sensations or the breath. The fact that you are going to one is like the mind is a little bit on automatic, basically, because it goes automatically to the sensations, suggests to me that maybe the mindfulness is not really as strong as ideally it should be. Because if it's really strong, you feel in charge. You feel that you can direct your mind wherever you want to direct it, and you will not be trapped by those sensations in that case. So something like that. It's not kind of right or wrong as such. It's just a matter of where it takes you, where it goes. Yeah. Okay, so I'll leave it at that for now. So please feel free to come back to these things if you wish at some other point. Okay, dear Ajahn, you were talking about people's auras this morning. Okay, have you come across a person or a place with a strong aura, both negative and positive? I found the Buddha statue at Benares Museum very powerful in a very, very positive way here. Aura or just atmosphere or whatever you want to call it. Auras usually means a light around the body. And some people can see lights around people's bodies, apparently, and they can tell your mental state by the color of the light. It's interesting, this person is angry, this person is peaceful, this person has all kinds of desires or whatever, and you can tell from that. But absolutely, there are places with good and bad energies, no doubt. And in India, when I was there, I was having a hard time getting into the atmosphere at Bodh Gaya because it was so busy. It's incredibly busy there. There's just so many things going on, so many rituals, so many people chanting, from 5 a.m. until 9 p.m. continuously throughout the day without end in sight. And so it's hard to really tune in. So the places I found more powerful, one of the places, I think I mentioned this here before, was the museum in Delhi, because it had the Buddha relics, and also the Vulture Peak, because of its association with the Buddha, and sitting meditation there early in the morning, before dawn, was actually very, very interesting. So these are in India, my two favorite places. But as I mentioned earlier on, the Bodhinyana monastery, the meditation hall there. A lot of people find it very nice. Yeah, for those of you who have been to Bodhinyana monastery, I find it very nice. It's kind of has a kind of atmosphere to it. But that hall too loses its energy if there's too much noise and commotion going on. Yeah, on the Katina day when everyone is there and messing around, then of course it loses that energy. But as soon as people withdraw, the energy returns. It's as if it is there, but suppressed by all the activities. Negative places with negative auras. I remember I was in Norway, and I went to this place. There was a place, this was in the fjords, beautiful, beautiful place, scenically. And then there was this enormous house there, which kind of looked sort of semi-derelict. And this was an old asylum for the insane. People had been locked up in this place. But now it had been, it wasn't in operation anymore. It had been already ended its operation a long time ago. And myself and another monk, we kind of were interested. We were thinking maybe this could be a meditation center, yeah? Because it was sitting there in the middle of nowhere. No one wanted it, so we could probably have it for free, probably this enormous building with lots of little rooms, right? Perfect for meditation center, until you go inside. And the feeling is just terrible. It kind of, the whole place just feels kind of, it's like you get this feeling of hungry ghosts hanging around everywhere. It's kind of the feeling you have. It's kind of really dark kind of feeling, very, very negative. And so that's kind of I think the most powerful experience I had of kind of negative energy, if you wish. And so, the Buddha statue at Benares, I agree, that's a very beautiful one. The Varanasi Museum is a very nice museum. It has all kinds of things. It has the famous Ashokan lion capital. That is also remarkable, but for entirely different reasons. But it's very intact, kind of lion capital, polished. It looks like it was made yesterday almost, and it's 2,300 years old. It's kind of really extraordinary, beautifully carved and everything. And then you have this Buddha statue, which is one of the most famous ones in the world, because it kind of reflects, what an artist would say is a beautiful statue is one thing, but what a Buddhist would say is a beautiful Buddha statue is something else. A good Buddha statue should reflect some of those qualities we expect to see in the Buddha. It should be peaceful, it should be benevolent, it should be like inward looking. Yeah, you see them having like the eyelids kind of halfway down. It looks like it's looking inward, contemplative or meditating. And when you get that nice feeling in a Buddha statue, that to me is a good Buddha statue. The artistic qualities are kind of irrelevant. And then you see some of these other Buddha statues that were done by kind of the Greeks and things, because the Greeks were the ones who started doing Buddha statues. And they obviously had no clue about who the Buddha was. And so the Buddha is kind of warrior-like. He's musculous and kind of strong, and he looks a bit scary. And then it's very strange. I don't know, they obviously had no idea. But then those who were made later on in India, people who obviously knew more about the Buddha and what he represented, very, very beautiful. These are 5th century Buddha statues, some of these. And yes, they can have a very nice feeling to them. It's hard to know whether it is just the look that kind of reminds you of qualities, or whether the statue itself imbues some of those qualities. Not sure. Dear Bhante, your teaching is having an impact. Much gratitude. A question: what are some teaching practices for someone who wishes to gently detach from livelihood? Seeing craving for existence tied up with identification with the work they do in the world. Okay, how can this letting go be done whilst in the world, in the lay life? Identification with the work they do in the world is not such a good idea to identify with your work too much, because that identification will cause you problems when you retire. I remember my own father, when he retired, he sometimes didn't know what to do with himself. Actually, he was pretty good. He wasn't one of the worst. But some people really don't know what to do with themselves after they retire, because you identify with the work. Instead of identifying with the work, identify with how you do the work. Yeah, how you do the work is with a sense of, if you are coming from a Buddhist, do all your work. Do it with kindness, with gentleness, with patience, with compassion, with an attitude of giving, of caring. And if you do all your work like that, identify with that attitude rather than the actual work. It's a bit like, when we had all the troubles in Myanmar, we had all the Rohingyas being persecuted by certain monks and the government in Myanmar. And certain monks were also on board with that. And it was kind of terrible to see. And the argument they had for persecuting the Rohingyas was that, well, these people are destroying Buddhism, and so we need to stop that. We see what happened in India. We don't want that to happen in Myanmar, so we've got to stop these Muslims who come into our country. It's completely the wrong way of stopping, even if it was true, and I don't think it was, you can't draw that sort of parallel. It's completely silly, because times have changed, history has changed, that parallel doesn't hold. The Rohingyas are very different from the invaders of India 1,000 years ago. A very different kind of ideas. One are refugees, the other one were military adventurers who were invading a country. It's a completely different situation. And in any case, it's the wrong way to kind of keep Buddhism going for the future. Yeah, this is not the right way. The right way is to practice these principles. And when you practice them, people get inspired to see what is going on. That is how you prolong the life of Buddhism. And so the problem there is the identity. You identify as a Buddhist. And when you perceive someone is a threat to that identity, then you want to remove them. You want to kind of make sure that they don't destroy you. It's yourself that you're concerned about. So don't identify as a Buddhist. Identify instead as one who practices Buddhism. Yeah, that is far more powerful, because then your identity can never really be threatened, because it is about your practice. It's about how you live your life, and that can't be threatened. And so change your identity. Have an identity that kind of is more, is more befitting for actually keeping Buddhism alive in the proper way. And this is a much better way of doing things. In the same way with work, when you work, identify with how you live your life, how you do your work, not what you do. And if you do that, then there is no clear distinction between your work and your lay life and your spiritual path. It all comes together. And then when you lose your job or whatever, you can just carry on in the same way. You just use it in different areas, and then you will be fine. Yeah. So that's what I would recommend. And then you can maybe, if you feel that you still want to do things in the world, you still want to be active, but you don't have a livelihood anymore, you can take on some other nice jobs. Charity work or whatever. There's always kind of a need for people to do good things. Go and live in the monastery, go and cook for the nuns in Santi Monastery. The nuns in Santi, they need some good anagarikas, right? Yeah, so there you are. That's the opportunity for you. When you retire, go straight to Santi Monastery and stay there and do charity work, supporting the Sangha. Wow, that would be so good. Yeah, it would be very useful for the bhikkhunis and very good for you, whoever you are. I don't know who you are, but whoever you are, it would be a really nice thing to do. So there you are. Okay, so let's go on to the next one. Dear Ajahn, I've heard you say that at various times the deva realm is closer to the human realm, and that the two world cycles between being closer and further, that the two worlds cycle between being closer and further apart. Is this correct? Does the human lifespan actually become thousands of years? Does this have any benefit for our reflection other than mere fascination? It's a good point. Yeah, a lot of these things are just kind of speculative and they don't really do much for your practice. But I think all of these things can be used for practical reasons. So it's, according to the suttas, the human realm kind of fluctuates between 10 years at the very shortest up to 84,000 years at the longest. And 10 years you can kind of understand, because there are animals that only live for 10 years. In fact, there are animals that only live for a day, like insects and things like that. But 84,000 years is more difficult to understand, because this body here is not fit to live for 84,000 years. Yeah, it's kind of obvious. Don't want to know what it looks like after 84,000 years. So it must mean that the whole realm fluctuates. That's kind of how I understand it. In other words, the realm goes higher up and comes closer to the deva loka. And what that means is that your body is different. Your body is more like a deva body. So the bodies of the devas of the four great kings, which is the lowest of the deva lokas, the lifespan there, what is it again now? It's a long life, millions of years, basically. I can't remember now exactly how long the lifespan is, but it's a long, long, long lifespan. So if our body becomes more refined, less coarse, then it has the possibility of living longer. It's like the whole realm kind of gets lifted up and gets closer to the deva loka. So I would say it looks like the realm is kind of fluctuating like this over long periods of time. And so human beings then are a little bit more like devas, and then they go down and go below 100 years, down to 10 years. We're probably more like animals at that point, or ghosts or whatever. And so we fluctuate between these things. And this is one of the reasons why, even though Homo sapiens has only existed in the world for 300,000 years or whatever, there were human realms probably before that, but they were not visible from our realm because they were probably more refined. And so there were dinosaurs here, and the human realm was kind of somewhere else probably. Something like that. And so this is kind of how you can maybe justify the suttas, and actually fit in with what the world actually looks like, from our point of view. This is all very speculative, I have to admit. I don't really know exactly what is going on, but this to me sounds like a reasonable hypothesis. So does this have any bearing on our practice? I guess it just has a bearing on how everything is incredibly impermanent and uncertain and unreliable. Nothing can be relied on. Everything is changing. Everything is moving around. We talk about 31 realms of existence. Maybe there are few realms, sometimes more realms. It's just really complicated and difficult. So it's all about anicca and out of control. I suppose that's the bottom line about these things. All right. Dear Ajahn, I was observing the ducks at the pond every day since the retreat began. Sometimes they are able to run on the surface of the water. They are really the experts in the field. How come humans can't be experts in their breath to make their lives balanced, even with a great help from the Buddha, because of hindrances or because we don't care? Your comment, please. No, it is not because you don't care. I think you care, and I think that's why you are here. It is because of hindrances. That's the reason. It's because we don't apply the mind in the right way, because we haven't got enough right view. That is a very big part of it, and is one of the reasons why I will talk more about right view over the remaining days. It's basically hindrances. You don't understand the importance of the breath fully yet. So little bit of non-caring is actually probably right about that, because not understanding the significance means you don't place enough value in the breath. It really is incredibly valuable as a tool or an aid towards achieving unification of mind, so that there's some truth to that. But the breath is a very subtle thing. The vast majority of people find it not easy to follow the breath. It is not an easy thing to do. And so don't be surprised if it is hard. And if it is really hard, don't keep on doing and banging your head against the proverbial wall. Instead, try something else. Do some metta meditation. Do some contemplations. Do a bit of walking. Or just chillax on your seat or whatever. But don't try again and again and again and keep on failing, because that is where it becomes the ritual of sitting but not getting anywhere. That kind of is pointless in many ways. Don't make meditation into a ritual. All right. Wow, so many questions. Okay. Dear Bhante, many merits to you for being a kalyanamitta to us and inspiring us in walking the path. Could you kindly expand on the iti ajattang va bahiddang va, internal, external, in Satipatthana Sutta? How do we practice this in meditation? May all the wholesome merit pave your way to Nibbana for you. May you be blessed with good health, clarity of mind, and long life. Yes, may it be so. So ajattang means internal, bahiddang means external. And so the idea here is that the purpose here, first of all, is to gain samadhi and then to gain insight. So ajatta and bahidda is particularly meaningful when it comes to things like the 31 parts of the body. Because the 31 parts of the body, you start with your own body. You pull it apart, you see all the parts in what you are constructed of. But then after a while, you do it with other people as well. So this is what it means, ajattang, then you do it with other people, and then comes ajatta bahidda. So ajattang va, bahidda va, ajatta bahidda va, which is internal, external, and then both internal and external. And so the final one is like when you make come to the universal conclusion that all bodies are like this. That obviously is important because there is no escape from these things. All bodies are like that. At least in the human realm, that is the case. And this is the idea all the way through. So then you come to the Vedana-nupassana, for example, contemplating feelings. Well, obviously the main thing is going to be yourself, because it's very hard to contemplate the feelings of others unless you make or do you just kind of guess or make an inference, whatever you want to call it, or you read their mind maybe you can kind of do the feelings, but that's not a very practical way of doing Satipatthana meditation, having to read other people's minds. We won't have many experts in Satipatthana if that is a requirement. So what it means then is that you contemplate your own feelings, and then you extend that to include other beings because you know they must be just like you. You don't have to actually see their feelings directly, but you know what their feelings are based on yourself. And then you come to the universal conclusion that all beings are like this. All beings have feelings that come and go, piti, sukha, and the contemplation actually is valid for everyone. And the same thing goes for for Chittanupassana and Dhammanupassana, all the four. Ajattang, regard yourself, then external, and then both internal and external. And what about the breath meditation? How can you do that also internal and external? And I would say the breath meditation is mostly internal. So there you go internal all the way to the point of samadhi. All the way to Vimochang Chittang, step number 12. And then when it comes to the contemplation of anicca, the last four parts, there you can do both internal and external, and you can universalize, because that is when you're contemplating phenomena in the world, and those phenomena are obviously the same for everyone, all beings. So something like that, So I hope that makes a little bit of sense. Dear Ajahn, this morning you said ethics should be beyond the 5 precepts and include metta, etc. When I was young, 50 plus years ago, we learned about Pancadhamma. This is the complete Panchasila comprising of metta, dana, brahmacharya, satya, and sati. Is there such a teaching in the suttas? I don't remember that this particular group, is found as 5 things. I don't know where this is from. I will have to look it up. You can just type in those words and search for them, and you will come out whether they, whether they are found as a group or not, or whether it's in the suttas or the commentaries or somewhere else. But they are a nice group, I have to admit. Yeah, they are obviously, you are, if you do these things, you're obviously doing very well. So metta is the metta, so that is the friendliness or the love. Dana is the generosity. Brahmacharya, there's a question mark here, so maybe not quite sure, but brahmacharya means being celibate or abstaining from sexuality of all kinds. Satcha, which is truthfulness, and sati, mindfulness. So it's a nice kind of nice group of things, but it doesn't really cover everything, does it? That's the problem. So there are kind of gaps here. So what about stealing? It doesn't say that stealing is bad, yeah? So it doesn't say anything about, presumably it's covered by dana, but it doesn't say it specifically here. So it doesn't say you can't kill mosquitoes in here. Mosquitoes might still be fair game, yes?
In fact, these come together as a set.
Yeah.
So in Thai, we call it Pancasila, refrain from doing something.
Yeah.
Pancadhamma, please try to do this.
I see.
So it's just kind of complement.
Okay.
So this set complements the Pancasila.
Okay, well, that's very nice. In that case, it's very nice. So it's the opposite of the other ones. Yeah, that makes very good sense. And that is exactly kind of how the Dhamma works. You want the negative sila and the positive sila. You don't want kind of both sides.
But I can't find that in Sutta Central.
Yeah. So that's right. Yeah. So I don't know if it. I don't know. Can't answer. Don't know where it's from. Have you searched? Have you searched for these things?
I have done that because we usually talk about the negative things, not to do something, and then when you say that, in fact, you should practice metta, and that reminds me, this is part of our school curriculum.
Right.
During my primary school, so it means that try not to do this, but try to do this. So it's not just don't kill, but also have kindness for others. Don't steal. So try to give out, so to reduce your greed.
Exactly. Yeah.
So
that's good.
It must have come from somewhere.
Yeah. So maybe it is. Yeah, probably. I will look it up for you, and I will get back to you and see if I can find this. I can't remember this in the. Normally, this sort of thing would be in the Anguttara Nikaya, but I can't remember this particular group. But it is a very nice group. So thank you for sharing that with us. So I will put it over here so I don't forget. Okay, dear Ajahn Brahmali, do the suttas provide guidance on specifics of vipassana meditations as they do for anapanasati meditation? So, anapanasati meditation is vipassana meditation. Yeah? So this is the point. The point is that the suttas do not distinguish between samatha meditation and vipassana meditation. They just have meditation. And that meditation leads to 2 results, samatha and vipassana. Samatha means you are calm. Vipassana means you see clearly. Yeah? So this distinction is a modern distinction, doesn't exist in the suttas. In the suttas, the 2 words always go together, samatha, vipassana. Both arise together. So, but there are things that you might say are more vipassana oriented, but they're not really called that in the suttas. And this is what I mentioned the other day about sanya. You want to develop perceptions. And some of these perceptions are closer to what we now call vipassana. So, for example, you develop the anicca sanya, the perception of impermanence. That is closer to what is called vipassana, because vipassana is you're looking for impermanence in your 5 khandhas as you're practicing here. Yeah, so that is closer to that. But they're not actually called, interestingly, vipassana in the suttas. They're called sanyas, the development of perception. You learn to see the world and yourself in the right way, according to the way they actually are. Anatta sanya, dukkha sanya, pahana sanya, viraga sanya, sabbaloka anabhirati sanya. All of these are various perceptions that you find especially in the Anguttara Nikaya. You find these various perceptions. That is how I would recommend you to do vipassana. You can do this at any time. Yeah, contemplate these things. The modern day of doing vipassana is more like you sit down and you kind of watch the change of sensations in your body. That's kind of the way it is done these days. But the suttas don't really talk about it in that way. So I don't know if it's wrong, but it doesn't really talk about. The suttas is more like, okay, contemplate impermanence in a very general sense, like, the world is impermanent, or my family is impermanent, or the body is impermanent. That's like death, right? Death is obviously a very strong aspect of impermanence, or important aspect of impermanence. And we will come to this later on. We'll discuss this in greater detail. But so vipassana is just the clear seeing. Yeah, your mind becomes clear, and then you can use that clear seeing and direct it towards various things. So you can come out of the watching the breath, and this is what we talked about before when we're talking about the anapanasati sutta. Come out afterwards, and then you think back, what disappeared, what changed, what was dukkha. Yeah, something has disappeared, now you feel better, it must have been dukkha. The fact that it disappeared means it's impermanent. The fact that you cannot access it means that it is non-self. So that is then how you can arguably call that vipassana, if you like. Although in the suttas don't call it that, they call it anupassi or sanya development and these kind of things. So these are just two sides of the same coin. So if you do the sanyas and you do that successfully, then you will feel calm. So if you are able to do the anicca sanya, and perceive impermanence in the world, then the world starts to seem much more yucky, much less interesting. And the result of that is you become more peaceful. Because if the world is what agitates you, the world is what kind of keeps you going, where craving is, all these kind of things. So with less interest in the world, with less craving for the world, with less ill will in regard to the world, all of these things dying down, it means that you become more peaceful, so you sit down. So the development of the sanya, call it vipassana if you like, leads to peace. When you are at peace, you see more clearly, that leads to vipassana. They're two sides of the same coin, they go together. So there are slightly different practices, but all of them lead to both vipassana and samatha. I hope that makes sense. If not, please try again. Dear Ajahn, you emphasize compassion as a key quality of the Buddha. However, compassion is not included in one of the 9 qualities in the Buddha, in the Itipiso thing. Why is this so? Thank you for inspirational teachings. You're right, it is not included there directly. That is true. But the Buddha is said sometimes to dwell in compassion in the suttas. The Mahakaruna is one of the kind of qualities of the Buddha. In that famous chant, one of the epithets of the Buddha is Mahakaruniko, the greatly compassionate one. And so you see that in the suttas, and you see that also after his awakening, when he reflects whether anyone in the world will be able to understand the teachings. And then the compassion arises, and then he decides, okay, I will go out and teach, because he sees there are people with little dust in their eyes who will understand. And so you're right, it's not really there. And what that means, I suppose, is that the insight and the wisdom is more important than the compassion. So it focuses on wisdom, on the wisdom of the Buddha, the seer of the world, the conduct and insight and conduct, vidya charana. So compassion maybe could come under conduct, maybe, it's arguably could come under that, but it's certainly not directly spoken of. And then the Buddha as a teacher, is emphasized. So that also, I guess, as a teacher, you can sort of kind of file compassion under being a good teacher, although it is not explicitly mentioned as such. Yeah. So again, probably you have a good point there, and probably because compassion is less important than these other qualities, the wisdom is really the most important one here.
When I thought the 9 qualities are quite special to like the Buddha and maybe the Arahants, but compassion is something that many other people also have to share.
Yeah.
And it's not having innate qualities. All
Yeah.
these are
Yeah.
and then there's so many others
Yeah.
as well. So but we have just taken out the most significant and quite unique. I mean in the 9 there are many that are only for the Buddha.
Right. Yeah. 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 That's a good point, because compassion, even the highest level of compassion, can be developed by putujanas. It is not really an Aryan quality as such, whereas loka vidu probably is an Aryan quality. And so anuttari purasa dhamma sarati is obviously also Aryan quality. Vidya charana sampanno, definitely Aryan quality. Yeah, so that's an interesting point. So thank you for that. Okay, dearest Ajahn. Can lay people in current world become stream winners? How does one know after emerging from jhana that he or she has entered the stream, or both? Thanks, Ajahn. Can is an interesting word. Can mean many different things. Is it theoretically possible that a lay person can become a stream enterer? The answer is yes, it is theoretically possible. Is it likely to happen? No. I know some very inspiring lay people. There is one lady I know who lives outside of Melbourne. She lives on this large property all by herself, and all she does is meditate and all day and all the time, and she just contemplates non-self all the time. She's kind of one of these amazing people. She and her dog lives on this 150-acre property in the middle of nowhere. And it's kind of amazing that anyone can live like that, let alone a woman. As a woman, you're obviously a bit more vulnerable than as a man. But that's the way she lives her life. And she is very impressive. Is she a stream enterer? Maybe. I don't know. She's kind of one of the very few lay people I think might be a stream enterer. I don't actually know. Even with her, I have my doubts, to be honest, because after talking to her, I'm not so sure. But she certainly is gone a long way on the path, and she is very, very impressive. So it can be done in theory. In practice, it is very hard. And you have to live a bit like this lady, and she basically considers herself a monastic. Yeah, she doesn't think of herself as a lay person anymore. She always wears white, she keeps the 8 precepts all the time. Yeah, and so she kind of lives like a monastic, basically. Yeah. So if you live a more ordinary lay life, even less likely. Yeah. So, but you can probably tell a little bit from how good your meditation is. Is your meditation super duper powerful? And if it is, as a lay person, and you kind of get nimittas all the time, regularly, occasionally you go into jhanas, then I would say you have a good chance of becoming a stream enterer, if that is the case. So then you have a good chance. But if you want to go the highway to stream entry, it's obviously monasticism. Because that's the whole point of the Buddha laying down the monastic life, is to give you that highway to awakening. So you're far more likely to succeed. Maybe you are not capable of doing that because you have various kind of engagements and obligations in lay life, in which case you can't do it. But if you are kind of wondering whether you should become a monk or a nun, or whether you should stay as a lay person, well, if you're really serious about this path, you're better off as a monastic, provided you can find a good monastery, of course, to take you in. Don't just become a monastic anywhere, because that may make it difficult, but find a good place to stay. That's important as well. Right, you know her, yeah, of course, okay, good, yeah, exactly, it does. Yeah. Definitely not the stream entry. Okay. Okay, yeah.
Obviously they can be stream enters. You know, it was very difficult for a lay person to, understand who to be and who not to. And
Yeah.
to run on this very lax with jhanas and bodhisattvas
Yeah.
with stream entry.
Yeah.
When people bodhi and I talk to a person, he was like, no,
Yeah. Yeah.
suddenly you come on an aspect, it's
Yeah.
just impossible.
Yeah, I know both Ajahn Brahm and Bhikkhu Bodhi. I know them both. Ajahn Brahm certainly very well, but also Bhikkhu Bodhi a bit. And Bhikkhu Bodhi is very good with scholarly things, but Ajahn Brahm is better with meditation. So I would, if Ajahn Brahm says what he says, I would be behind Ajahn Brahm, to be honest with you. So, what was that?
Then we do have a chance.
I think, well, yeah, I mean, there is a chance, right? But yeah, I mean, there's always a chance, but it's all about how your mind is now, and if your mind is really good now, then there's a chance. But the thing is that for most people, they need to develop over a long period of time, and they need to kind of change the outlook and so many different things, and all of these things needs a certain, is supported by the environment you're in and who you're with and all of these kind of things. Yeah.
Ajahn,
Yes.
this may be a discouraging news for lay people.
Discouraging news, yes, okay. Yeah.
So then what is the
Yeah.
goal?
The goal.
Yes.
The goal is to
For doing all these things.
forget about goals. The only goal you should have is to improve as much as possible. That's the only goal. Yeah. So move forward. You should measure every year. You should ask yourself, after 1 year, after 6 months, am I a better person now than I was 6 months ago? That is all you should ask. If you think about stream entry, actually, I think that's the wrong way of thinking, because it's like you're waiting for some big event to happen, but actually that goes against the way the path really works. Instead, see if you are improving, and if you are improving, you will eventually become a stream entry, because that is the way stream entry happens. So that's what you should ask. So every 6 months, ask yourself, okay, am I becoming more kind? Am I becoming more gentle? Have I got less defilements? Is my mindfulness becoming established? Am I able to watch the breath better than I was before? Am I able to do the metta meditation? These are the questions you should ask yourself. Are you improving? And if you are, then you will eventually get there. And if not in this life, in your next life. Are you happy? Are you okay with that answer? It is too dangerous. This idea of goals, I want a jhana, it's misguided. It's not the right way of thinking about the path, because it just leads to craving. It leads to the wrong way of thinking about the path. Be really happy when you see yourself improving. Wow, I'm improving. I'm more generous than I was before. It feels so nice to be generous. Wanting to give, wanting to support. It feels so nice to say nice little things to the people around me. I'm learning. You're learning kindness. You're learning all of these kind of simple little things through the practice. This is what matters. This is what you can measure. You can measure this kind of progress, whether you are a stream mentor or not. Sometimes you don't know where to start the measurement for those kind of things. So just look at your life, whether you're going in the right direction or not. These kind of goals, they become blockages very often. Don't worry about those goals. If stream mentor is meant to happen to you, it will happen eventually. Joe, yeah.
It's a long-term goal.
Right. Yeah. 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 So exactly, it is too large to really be able to wrap our heads around. I mean, and one of the nice things that Ajahn Brahm always said is that our goal on the path should be to kind of gradually disappear, become less and less and less. So you look at yourself, am I becoming less? Is there less me going on? Less, do I kind of vanish from the world in a sense? And so all of these ideas, about stream entry and jhana can be turned into the delusion of a self will grasp onto those things and make them into something that they are not. So instead of even thinking about those, because they can be so tricky, instead just think about, okay, let me take a baby step. You know the old saying in the Chinese saying that a journey of 1,000 miles starts with one step. That's a beautiful way of thinking about it. Take that one step and then take another, and before you know it, you're at the end of the journey here. Yeah, it just happens like that. So every little thing. Yeah, whereas these big goals, they kind of, if you think about the end goal of those 1,000 miles, you give up even before you get started because it's too long. So don't forget about those 1,000 miles. Just take this one little step in front of you. Yeah. Please, Venerable. Yeah.
I was just wondering, how come during the time of the Buddha there were many people who began stream winners, but not only that, in Pancadhamma, why not? When you just said no
Yeah.
straight away, it felt not correct according to the sutta, what the Buddha says.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I hear what you're saying
Yeah.
in reality, but it's
Yeah, maybe I'm too negative. Maybe there are some stream winner lay people out there. Maybe there are some. I don't know. It's very hard. I mean, I only know a small number of. There are so many Buddhist lay people in the world, but I think that the path is very mostly not really known, understood. Most Buddhists are not really Buddhists. They are kind of believe in the eternal God and this kind of things. Most Buddhists have wrong view. They're not really. And so I think in those days, actually, there may have been more real Buddhists in those than there is now, even though the total number seems to be large. Actually, probably is less. And I think there is a lot of, many people have given up because the Dhamma has died out. No, there's no Aryas anymore. The Buddhists in name only. Buddhist in name only. Baino. Yeah, and so I think it seems like there's a lot of Buddhism going on in the world. Actually, I think there probably is very little Buddhism going on, and very few lay people who are really practicing and trying harder. I mean, we live in a very special culture right here with good teachers, people like Ajahn Brahm and kind of coming from Ajahn Chah and then spreading to the West, and we have a very unique situation. And I think most of the world doesn't have this kind of Dhamma access as we have. It's very, very rare. And so I think sometimes we don't understand how fortunate we are to live in this kind of Dhamma community where the Dhamma still is strong, where we still take an interest in the word of the Buddha and all of these things, and we actually practice that fully. And that is, so that's one thing. The other thing is a lot of the people who were supposed to be anagamis and streamers at the time of the Buddha, a lot of it is more like narratives and stories. It's very rare that the Buddha says that this person was a non-returner or whatever. And so, I don't know, maybe there were a few like that, but I think it's probably not many at all. I think they're very, very few and far between. And many of the stories that you read where someone meets the Buddha for the first time, the Buddha gives them the gradual teaching and they become stream enterers. Maybe, but it would have taken much longer than what it appears in those suttas. So it's hard to draw any conclusions, but I think the Dhamma is basically dying out, to be honest with you. I am really super pessimistic about the Dhamma. Now is the chance, now is the opportunity to do something. Yeah. So, yeah. Stuart, sorry, I think Stuart wanted to. Are you all right, Stuart? Yeah. Yeah.
So in the suttas and the Buddha says a few times that one of the marks of a stream lecturer are to have
Yeah.
willing sila.
Yeah.
And then sometimes he also says that you should have read out the dependent origination. But he doesn't really say that as often as he sometimes includes that, sometimes drops it off. But I said, like when I look around and I see some people practicing, like even some people in this room,
Yeah.
who I've seen, over a long period, they do appear to have a very unshakable faith in Buddha.
Yeah.
They have really good CLR.
Yeah.
I don't know what insights obviously they've had, but they certainly do seem to carry those traits, and that's over a long period of time.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm not sure what to take away from that, but
Yeah.
if that's that's what the Buddha said, then how do we then, you know, how do we then know whether or not they perhaps are streaming truths, or if they've not attained streaming truth, they're actually on the path towards doing that, because their faith does seem to be very, very strong, and their skill also very,
Yeah. Yeah, it is. I mean, this will have to be an internal viewpoint. You have to see it from inside. I think it's hard to judge from the outside. But yeah, it's an interesting point. Yeah, people have some of these qualities. That's a good point. I would say that it's probably can be very hard to judge. I mean, there's all kinds of faith. There is a kind of the real faith, because you understood you have actually seen the Dhamma, and then there is a faith that comes from a cultural kind of faith. You're part of a Buddhist culture. You're grown up that way, and you're kind of just used to kind of thinking of the Buddha as something amazing, like God or whatever. A bit like a Christian having faith in God, and the Christian have that faith in God. Whether God actually exists or not is irrelevant. The faith is there. So it's like, I would say that God doesn't exist, that they believe in. That's what I would say. I mean, depending on what, I don't know exactly what they believe in, but if they believe in a creator God who is always present and always there, I would say there is no such thing here. But the faith is kind of unshakable sometimes. It seems like that. And so it is very hard to know exactly what is going on here. So, yeah. But it is a good point, though, so thank you for mentioning that. Yeah. Yeah, yeah, Sakaya Ditti. Yeah, yeah. Then you are a stream entry if you have kind of overcome those three fetters. So so you have no doubt. That's exactly that's the kind of the flip side of the idea of having perfect faith, perfect confidence in the Buddha Dhamma Sangha. That you have no doubt. The flip side of that. Sakaya Ditti is that you know that there is no abiding permanent entity, no essence in a human being that is always kind of stable and always there. That's Sakaya Ditti. So you overcome that. And then you have no sila bhatta paramasa, means that you don't grasp onto your virtue and your observances. And because the virtue is natural to you as a stream enter, you don't need to grasp it anymore. Everyone else needs to grasp it to some extent, but not the stream enter here. That is what happens. But again, it can be very hard to know with certainty. Yeah. No. Sila is actually sila in the ordinary meaning, and bhatta or vata means observances. That could mean ritual, because observances can include rituals. But so it means virtues, and I think observances is more broad. It includes rituals, includes other observances, like sitting down to meditate every day, but just doing it as a yeah.
Review of our precepts. What happens if we keep our precept higher, like from 5 to 8 to 10?
Yeah.
Because I heard somebody said, if you can keep 8 precepts clear and pure, you can rebirth in the higher rank.
Yeah. I think that's probably true, and you probably can. Even with 5, you can do that, depending on because those additional 3 precepts, they are more like restraints. So they purify the mind. You kind of let go a little bit of the 5 sense world, but it's not actually necessarily to do with morality directly in terms of kindness and that sort of thing. So so 5, 8, even better. So the more, the better. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, but it's not. But it helps. But it's not about the number of precepts so much. It's more about the quality of your mind and your heart. Are you a good person? That's what it really is about. Yeah, and sometimes the precepts they don't cover all the bases. There are loopholes in the precepts. You may get away with some dodgy conduct even though you're keeping the precepts. Well, because, take, for example, the 4th precept, which is that you're not supposed to lie. It doesn't really cover other kinds of bad speech. But the Noble Eightfold Path does. So what you should be practicing is the Noble Eightfold Path, and not strictly just grasp onto the precepts, because it's not broad enough. It doesn't cover everything. Yeah. All right. Sorry.
Traditional countries like Sri Lanka,
Yeah.
there are people who are practicing
Yeah.
They don't necessarily come out and say or announce.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
there may be.
Yeah, it's a good point, yeah. And Sri Lanka, Thailand, probably the same, yeah. Burma, probably the same. All those really solid Buddhist countries, probably a lot of people who practice, and there could be some who do. So, yeah, it's very, so quite likely there are some exceptional individuals there, yeah. But, I've been a monk for 30 years, and I know that although that is probably true, it is also quite rare, yeah. I think that is kind of one of the conclusions you can come to. Even among monastics, if I look at how many are actually Aryas, noble ones, it's few. It's not many. Few. How many Arahants are there in the world? Not many. Yeah, you can count them on. I don't know. It's impossible to say, but I was going to say you can count them on one hand, and maybe that's true. It's not a lot. Anyway, yeah. So what I'm saying, I suppose, is that things are dangerous, and this is our opportunity. Yeah. Dear Venerable, Bhava independent origination refers to creating new existences. So there's 31 realms. The 31 realms are not pre-existing. We create them. ? Thank you. Yes, that is true. We create them. So even these are realms that exist because you achieve a certain. Many of these things are samadhi realms. So when you achieve a certain state of samadhi and you die, and you kind of enter that samadhi as you die or upon dying, then you enter that realm. And it is not really a realm, like the human realm, we're all kind of hanging out together, so it's kind of different. But these realms are like individual, you are there by yourself. And it doesn't matter if other people are in the same realm, because they are like individually in that realm. You're not hanging out with anyone. Yeah. So the realm, yes, is in this case, absolutely created by the mind. And you kind of go there and you stay there for a while and you come out again. And so... yes, maybe realm is the wrong word, because realm almost makes it sound as if a bunch of beings are mind states. Yeah, more like mind states in a sense. Yeah. So, but yes, we create those realms, and the hell realms, the lower realms, I think often is also the same case, especially the really bottom ones, like the hell realms and things. Respected Ajahn, do we actually have to remind ourselves to still the physical process, mental process, etc., or go through the stages of anapanasati mentally, or this all happens automatically? It generally happens automatically, if you keep your attention on the breath, and that focus becomes quite close, on the breath, and you're kind of becoming more and more stilled in the mind, then this is kind of the nature of the mind and the body to calm down. So this tends to happen automatically. But sometimes you may need to remind yourself a little bit as well. You may need to kind of put in a little bit of the causes. Okay, let go a little bit more of the world. Okay, the world, who is interested in the world anyway? You let it go and suddenly you calm down because you help the path forward a little bit, or you add a bit of metta or whatever it is that you do to that process. But essentially, just hanging out will calm things down. And the reason for that is because the things that disturb the process are the 5 hindrances, especially the first 2, the kamachanda and the vyapada. And why? Well, because they are usually about the future and the past, and so they make you restless, and they make the mind come out of the present. You're no longer in the present. But if you stay with the breath, you are continuously undermining the 5 hindrances. When you are with the breath, the kamachanda doesn't have an opportunity to arise, nor does the vyapada. And the longer you stay away from those things, the less disturbed the mind is going to be, because those qualities are not there to disturb the mind. It's as simple as that. And so for that reason, you will become more calm. So you stay with it. But sometimes, again, like I said before, you come to a plateau because the mind has certain underlying graspings and holdings on that it can't let go of. And then it's useful to do a bit of contemplation to let go of those things, like maybe a bit of body contemplation or whatever. So... yeah, okay, good. Dear Bhante, thank you so much for teaching the Dhamma. First day at Sutta discussion talked about anicca, dukkha, anatta and explained that if impermanent, anicca, then dukkha arises. But sometimes impermanent is not dukkha, it is sukha. For example, if cancer is impermanent, it is sukha. How do we define that? Thank you. Yes, sometimes impermanence is sukha, that is true, but there is a general problem here, and it is that general problem that anicca refers to, and that is that we attach to things. That is the general reality. And so what do we attach to? Well, we attach to a large number of things in the world, to other people, to belongings, to ideas, to whatever, large number of things, to religions, like Buddhism or whatever. And we also attach to inner things. We attach to who you think you are as a person. And the problem with anicca, it tends to undermine all of those attachments. And so if there is anicca, there will always be dukkha. The fact that there is sometimes, it is a positive thing, that's different. In fact, the problem with this kind of argument is that it assumes dukkha already. Because the only way that impermanence is happiness is because there was dukkha beforehand. So a dukkha is already assumed in that argument, And so it doesn't really get you out of anything. It just shows you that there's dukkha in another way, in another place. So yes, sometimes impermanence is positive, but as a general kind of thing, because of our attachments, it is problematic in the world. And that's why the Buddha talks about when there's anicca, the outcome is dukkha. That's the general tendency here. Okay, dear Ajahn Brahmali, thank you for your talks, which have been very helpful to me. Your talks seem to come from a place of deep conviction and are inspiring to hear. My question is, does gender change or remain stable across rebirths? The sutta seem to suggest that gender may change during rebirth, but does it change often? This question is difficult to answer. I think it probably does not change that often. I think we tend to be... Most people are probably attached to the gender to some extent. We are used to our gender, and so we think that seems normal to us, and we don't really know fully what it is like to be the other gender, so we're probably quite happy in our gender. And if you're happy with your gender, you're likely to carry across in the future, because this is the way things are. What we are attached to, it's like people. Why do we meet the same people in our next life? Why do we tend to have the same family members across lifetimes? Basically because of attachment. The mind moves in that direction towards those same people. In the same way, the mind moves towards that gender. Of course, you might say gender is all about chromosomes and these kind of things. But what is it that guides those chromosomes? Why do these things happen in a certain way? And I think that very often is the mind itself. So I think you tend to be the same gender lifetime after lifetime until something happens which requires a gender change. Maybe you suddenly want to be the other gender. Some people do want to be the other gender. Or maybe some perception arises, or maybe even some karmic kind of thing which influences you in one way or another. I don't know. But I think the tendency is to be the same. That's my understanding of it. But yeah.
Somebody, but you can clarify this from James Shepherd.
Yeah.
Who does a lot of past life regression.
Mhm.
So I heard from that person that when he does, 60% of his clients, I have actually changed gender into the.
Really?
Yeah, I was very shocked to hear because
Okay.
I thought I had the same view
Yeah.
that you
Huh.
have to go to the same gender that you're used to, but you can clarify something.
Okay, that's interesting. Yeah.
You have a little bit more.
Yeah.
about that.
Okay, yeah. But, yeah, okay, that's interesting. But, of course, these kind of things are very uncertain, right? These past life regressions, so don't know. And, yeah. All right.
The gender is not really important in my awareness, but it's like,
Yeah.
in higher awareness, it's probably not that such a big deal. Whereas like human awareness and animal awareness,
Yeah.
probably it's a big.
In the higher realm, it's not so much of a big. I agree. Yeah, true. And eventually, it disappears altogether, and they're just beings. Yeah, so that is true. And that is what you see in meditation as well. When you become peaceful and calm, it's like you don't identify anymore as male or female. It kind of the whole thing starts to disappear. So yeah. All right.
Ajahn,
Yes.
you mentioned karmic cause.
Yeah.
In Thailand,
Yeah.
this is about peculiarization, but anyway,
Yeah.
the thing is that women are perceived as inferior to men because in our past life we violated the third precept, and this is our karmic punishment, and you can't ordain and whatnot. That is another implication. But so if you would like to be a better human being, you should try to be a man. So try to be safe, and you be reborn as a man, then you can get ordained.
I see,
That
yeah.
is the big argument that's been said a lot during the peculiarization episode. And even a famous monk that you know, I won't mention the name, third person told me, his close disciple told me that that's what he said. If you want to ordain, do lots of good things so that in your next life you will be a man.
Okay.
So is there anything in the sutta that talks about the karmic consequence of violating the third precept?
No, not really. Actually, there is. I think in the Chulakama Vibhanga Sutta, I think there is something there. And let's look at what that says, because now that we're talking about this controversial subject. But generally speaking, the suttas are about karma, is what takes you to the various realms. And the human realm, well, whether you're male or female, is not really part of the equation. It's the same karma, basically. And so I don't know, to me that whole thing is really dodgy. I don't know where they get it from. There are some books, later books and things that kind of make this kind of claims, but it's got nothing to do with the word of the Buddha. And to me it looks very, very spurious and dodgy. I don't think it's possible really to look at things quite like that. But let's see if we can find something in the Kamavibhanga Sutta. Let's see if I can get some nice translation. Let's see if I can find Bhante Sudatta's translations on here. Nikayas in English, that's a good start. Sujato, Middle Discourses of the Buddha, number 135, this is Chulakama Vibhanga Sutta, shorter analysis of deeds. So, kills living being, hurts living beings, is irritable and bad-tempered, jealous and envious. Maybe it is not here, I wonder. I think it is not mentioned here, actually. So maybe that means that it is not important. Yeah, okay. I'll have a look at it later on, maybe I can find something. But it doesn't look like it is mentioned in this sutta, in which case it is probably not a very important part of this. And maybe there isn't any kind of obvious correlation between breaking the third precept and karmic consequences, except that it is a bad thing to do and it leads to bad results in the future. So yeah, I can't tell. Yes, no, I think that is. I think that's really ridiculous. I think the difference between the men and women in the world, there obviously are differences, and I think it is quite clear that it is generally, I would say, a disadvantage to be born as a woman, or it has been historically, and I think it probably is in the present day. I think that's fair enough, but that's still fairly small compared to the disadvantage of being an animal, for example. That's a really big disadvantage, yeah, or a ghost, yeah. So it is relatively small, and so I don't think you can talk about karmic differences. For example, there are much more differences within the same gender than there is between the two genders. And so you find women who are in terrible state and women who are really good state, men in a terrible state. And those women who are in a good state will be far better off than those men in a terrible state. I've just been to India. I know what it's like to see people in a really, really bad state. And so I think that this is completely spurious to say that being a woman is a result of bad karma. I wasn't thinking about that when I was mentioning karma. I was mentioning karma in whatever other ways that they actually work out. So I think often this is kind of cultural conceptions that are based on all kind of other scriptures and actually the canonical scriptures, and that's where these ideas come from. And I don't know who you were talking about, but I visited Ajahn Brahmali, and when I visited Ajahn Brahmali, he said, "Well, okay, this is the way it is in Thailand, but in Australia, you should do what is right in Australia." That's what he said to me. And so, if if bhikkhunis is the right thing for Australian culture, then have bhikkhunis in Australia. That's what he said. In Thailand, they said it's too difficult to change, so we'll just stay with what we have. Okay, I don't know if that is true, but that was his perception of the situation anyway. So that was kind of good. So at least he was open to the idea. He didn't say that it should, in all cases, was wrong or anything like that. So that was kind of positive. Yeah. 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 Mm. Yeah. Yeah. I can't hear you properly, but I think what you're saying is, why is it that at the time of the Buddha there was this equality between men and women, but now it is not? That's what you're asking, is that right? Well, I think it's because it's a different culture. The Brahmanical culture or the Hindu culture, dominant culture of India, is much more patriarchal than the Buddha's view of the world. I think that is the reason. So the Buddha was actually, very often he went against the prevailing culture, as you would know. In part of that was having bhikkhunis. There weren't any, as far as I know, there were no Brahmanical female ascetics. I don't think they existed. I think there were ascetics, female ascetics of other religions, but not of the Brahmanical religion. And so I think it's just that the kind of prevailing culture reasserted itself after a while, and Buddhism lost ground, and that's why India, has this problem to the present day. And apparently there are value surveys about these things, and India is actually quite famous for having that kind of distinction between men and women, which is kind of more pronounced there than in most other India, Middle East, and a few other countries like that. Yeah.
When the sati was prevalent, during these times,
Yeah.
when there is no such distinction or it's pretty less now,
Yeah.
across the Western world as well, why bhikkhuni ordination is not accepted, is not acceptable.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay, now I see what you mean. Yeah. Okay, I think it's just the conservatism of culture. I think the reason why that it is not acceptable in the West is because sometimes the Westerners become more Thai than the Thais. The Westerners go to Thailand and they hang out in Thailand and they can become they think like Thais. And so they kind of get those values imbued, and then they think that this is what Ajahn Chah said, and so we should follow those teachings, and they take on those ways. I think that's what's going on. I don't know if he said that, but that's what they assume. And so the whole thing becomes kind of really silly. and stupid. And I think sometimes the Westerners are worse than the Thais. That's kind of the weird thing. They become more conservative than actually the Thais, which is kind of really silly and really, I don't understand how that happens, but it basically happens. And it takes someone like Ajahn Brahm to kind of break out of that mold and to understand that actually we are not here to follow culture, we're here to follow what the Buddha taught. And that's kind of what it takes. It takes someone with that ability to see through those things. But cultures are very conservative. All cultures are conservative. Hierarchies are by definition conservative, because hierarchies are about basically establishing power structures. That's what hierarchy by definition is. And so they become very conservative, and nothing changes. And so that's why change happens from the bottom up rather than from the top down. And this is what you see in Thailand. It is happening bottom up. Same thing in Sri Lanka. The Mahanayakas of Sri Lanka, they're not going to accept bhikkhunis, but some of the senior monks are, and thousands of bhikkhunis now in Sri Lanka, hundreds in Thailand, and there is a movement, and there is a lot of support in the population, both in Sri Lanka and in Thailand, and so this is just happening, from the bottom up. And why these Western monks I find it really hard to understand myself. It's kind of weird. They argue from the Vinaya, but there is no kind of clear answer about these things in the Vinaya. Anyway, I don't know. These are some of the conundrums. Anyway, I'm going to just finish off. I've got only a few more questions left. It's getting quite late, so let's finish these things off. So, dear Ajahn, referring to the Metta Sutta, how is the stream winner unburdened by duties? If I aspire to this, how do I still do work and service that offers meaning and purpose in my life? Thank you. It doesn't say actually unburdened with duties. It's appakicca. Appakicca means having few duties. That's what it says. And so you reduce your duties. You don't, you have as few duties as possible. That's really what it means. And if you have a lot of duties, you become burdened whether you want to or not. So have few duties. That is the idea. So how do you still do work and service? Well, you do those few duties really well. You do few duties, but you do them really well as a service that you offer to the people around you that gives you meaning and purpose in your life. That is the idea. And unburdened with duties, it may mean something like getting rid of your iPhone, checking it out, because that gives rise to many duties. Yes, wonderful.
I would comment on it that if you have less ego, you have less duties.
Yes. Good point. Yes, that is true, because ego probably kind of creates work and creates duties, and you are more at ease and less happening in that case.
Ajahn Brahm has lots of things to do.
He has. But he's also pretty good at letting go. Write him an email, he will not reply to you. This is kind of one of those things. And I can write Ajahn Brahm an email, he never replies to me. He doesn't reply to anyone. He just kind of occasionally he will reply if it's really important. But he's actually very good at letting go. And so he has in theory he has a lot of duties, but he's very smart with how to deal with it.
One of the qualities is actually they do their duties really well. Like 100%,
Right.
The cows, everything is very
Yeah.
powerful.
Yeah.
At the same time, they never, stream winner, not do anything. They do really well, but they do not abandon the practice either.
Right. So they do them well, but sometimes well means not doing anything here, I think. It's like, I love that story with Ajahn Liam. That story is very well known. Ajahn Brahm tells it all the time because he likes that story, and I think that's a classic story. And for those of you who don't know that story, this Ajahn Liam is the abbot of Wat Papong. He took over after Ajahn Chah passed away, and he is kind of praised by many people as being really well practiced and having his act together. Some people say he's an arahant. I don't know, maybe he is. But he, when they had Ajahn Chah's funeral service, they built this stupa for him, and they were going to create Ajahn Chah inside this stupa. And so they built this stupa, and they had like a chimney, and the smoke was supposed to go one way, and the flames were supposed to go one way, and everything was kind of organized. This massive pile of firewood, and put the coffin on top, and they're going to cremate Ajahn Chah. So they light the whole thing up. It goes, and he is the builder. Ajahn Liam is the builder. He's the mastermind behind the stupa, and everything goes wrong, and the flames go out everywhere, and the whole thing threatens to collapse. And what does Ajahn Liam do? He goes back to his cute and has a snooze. And he leaves the whole mess to other people, right, to sort out. And Ajahn Brahmali says that's really nice, because most people, they wouldn't be able to do that. They wouldn't be able to let go. They would feel that it's their responsibility. But Ajahn Liam probably thought, well, actually, I wasn't able to build it properly in the first place, so what do I know about how to fix this problem? I haven't got a clue, so I might as well just withdraw and allow other people to sort it out. And maybe that was right, But that ability to let go is also one of the hallmarks of the stream entry. So you do your duties well, but what well means is kind of hard, it's not difficult to define sometimes. It does not mean that you overwork. It does not mean that you do more than what is required. It doesn't mean that you allow other people to pressure you, for example. Most people in the world, we allow other people to pressure us. And then we do things because we feel obliged, and all of these kind of emotional entanglements with people around us. That is what pushes us to do things. Whereas the areas, no emotional entanglement, I do what I need to do, and that's it. And that already reduces the workload dramatically, I think,
Just doing your best.
Yes.
Just doing your best, and that's it.
Right, do your best, and that's all we can do very often, Exactly, Okay, I'm going to finish off these questions. There's only one question left? No. There's a big one over here. Okay, there's a couple of more questions left. I'll try to be fairly quick with this. Is the concept of bodhisattva right? Thank you. Is it right? Is it? No, I don't think the bodhisattva is right. I think the concept is the bodhisattva, which means the one intent on awakening. But the concept of the person who practices for incalculable eons to become a Buddha, I don't think there is any evidence for that in the early suttas, and I think it's a later idea, and I think it's more myth than a reality. I don't think that's how the path works. Anyway, we can discuss that maybe later on if you're interested. Yeah.
And in 500 years when he was born again, he chose now to abandon and to become an artist now, because he just thought it's just too much, because he had to go before incalculable eons to become a Jaiva Buddha also, so he didn't want to do that, so he finally let go and he attained Nibbana during that particular last lifetime when we know him. So these kind of things are floating around, like this Ajahn Brahmali who wrote a biography of Ajahn, so there they mention this concept of bodhisattva. So I know you understand, like we understand that this Buddha was bodhisattva. But why do even the Thai monks people not think on this concept?
Because it's so much part of the culture. This is kind of what we grow up with. We grow up with all of these ideas. It's actually very difficult to get out of those ideas. They come. You have to kind of really get into textual study in a deep way, and very few people do that. These were forest monks. They did mostly meditation. They probably didn't have enough recourse to textual study to really be able to make these distinctions. I'm sure there were people who were scholars who were kind of leaning in that direction, but it's rare to find the combination of scholarship and meditation practice together. And that's kind of the thing. And also, traditionally, it has not been very common to make a distinction between the suttas on the one hand and later literature on the other hand. It has not been very common. Usually everything gets put together as Buddhism. But the modern studies, especially now when we have the Tipitaka in various languages, and we can able to compare. This is a very new field, actually, the idea of a comparison of the suttas and these kind of things. Now we have the tools to be able to make those distinctions. It's a fairly new thing happening here, and this is also another reason why it didn't happen before, I think. So now I think it is pretty obvious that this, we know very quite clearly what is early Buddhism and what is later Buddhism. All right, Ajahn, are there any group trips being planned for India in 2025 that you are aware of? No. Not really. I mean, there are always trips going to India. I mean, there are it's people go there all the time, and so I'm sure there are some groups. There is one Australian monk called Venerable Achalo who goes to India all the time, apparently. I don't really know him, but sometimes he takes people from Melbourne to go to India. So maybe you can check out the BSV or something, some people from Melbourne. But there are trips. Keep your ears and eyes open, and maybe something will appear out of that. But none from the BSWA that I think. And so... yeah. Who? Yeah. Right. Yeah, that's just staying at Bodh Gaya. That's not really going around anywhere. Yeah. Okay. So I don't. Yeah. Okay. Good. So yeah, maybe you. Yeah. So if anyone are interested, maybe you can approach Lena and she can give you some advice on how to do that. Is that okay, Lena? Yeah. Okay. Thank you. All right. Last question for today. This is. Sorry, please.
Sorry, I just wanted to mention there's one more possibility. IMC in South Melbourne, they haven't completed the planning, but it seems quite possible.
Who is that?
The Insight Meditation Center.
Okay.
In Sunshine. They're planning that.
Okay. So Google the Insight Meditation Center.
Or email them.
Yeah.
December 2025.
All right. Okay. Yeah.
Oh, Sunshine after something else.
Yeah. Okay, let's come to the last question for today. So, dear Ajahn, Samyutta Nikaya 56-102. So this is the Satcha Samyutta, the connected discourses on the Four Noble Truths. And this is a quote from that sutta, I think. Then the Buddha, picking up a little bit of dirt, I think dirt under his fingernail, addressed the mendicants. What do you think, mendicants? Which is more, the little bit of dirt under my fingernail or this great earth? Good question. No, he kind of makes it very easy. Sir, the great earth is certainly more. In the same way, the sentient beings who die as humans and are reborn as humans are few, while those who die as humans and are reborn in hell are many. Yes. I could not find how many bits of dirt there are, but according to www.scientificamerican.com, there is about 400 quintillion grains of sand. Taking this as a guide, it means that I have about 1 in 400 quintillion chance of getting a human life next life. But then there are lots of stories of regular people being reborn human and recalling their previous human births. How do we reconcile a negligible chance of being reborn as a human with the many stories of human-to-human rebirth? So this particular sutta that you are referencing is one of